Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jami Albright. And this week on the show we have
Holly Darling.
Yes, we do. It's just a fantastic episode where we talk about email and welcome sequences. And it's just so good. Like, buckle up and get your pens ready because Sara and I both took a lot of notes.
We did. And I have a lot of ideas on small things I can do that will really improve.
Yes.
Just the flow of readers into my newsletter funnel. And it was excellent. So
it was really good. And what I loved is, like, she has big suggestions, but just small tweaks, like you said, will make such a difference. It was really, really so informative and just had me, both of us, we were like, oh my God.
Light bulb moment after. I thought the most interesting thing, a lot of it was really interesting, but one of the things that I took away the most was the customizing your opt-in button. You're opting in, and it's a different way of thinking about it. It's like, this is something they see. I can use this to introduce people to me, and so that they get to know me even before they get my first official email. So we talked about like what she recommends you put in each email in your welcome sequence, and just a lot of really good tips in this.
Yeah, Sara and I realized we were kind of overwhelming people with our first email. So
my sequence is maybe a little too complicated, and it's giving them more information than they probably need or want. So I don't really have any news this week much. I've been doing some consultations. We're still dealing, with my sister's cancer, and so I don't have any news, but Sara does, I think. So I've been doing some work on my Kickstarter because I'm going to try that. I've just been researching. I'd like to do a book box as one of the upper levels, So
You've been wanting to do that for a while.
I know. And I'm such a big research nerd. I'm like down the rabbit hole listening to subscription book box podcast and learning all this stuff. And it's fascinating and a little overwhelming. So I started making my cost, laying out all my cost. And I was like, oh, okay, this is I'm sure it will be fine. I'm sure it will be great. But, I've got to get through all that detail work. So working on that and getting almost all my translation stuff sorted so that it will all be in there and it just has to go live, which I'm really looking forward to. So it won't be, the formatting and the uploading, all that is pretty much done.
Yeah. That's great.
So that's exciting. So I'm glad about that. And basically that and editing and looking forward to InkersCon, which we have coming up. First week of June.
Can't wait. I've gotten a couple of messages from people. We have a little app for the conference, and a couple of people have messaged to say they are looking forward to meeting us because they listen to the podcast, and that's exciting. So again, if you're going, reach out to Sara and myself, and you can email us or you can reach out to us through that app and just let us know, and we'll try to
figure out something. Coffee, dinner, lunch, something.
Something.
But that's like all I've got this week. I feel like we're kind of going into summer and things are kind of like slowing down,
Should we tell people what we're going to do for summer?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We're going to, this was my idea. And Jami has graciously gone along with it. We're going to slow down personally this summer a little bit. We're going to do the podcast every other week. We're going to have a new episode every other week. And that way we'll both have some time off. And then Adriel and Alexa, who help us with all the back end production of it, will have some time off as well.
Yeah.
And, they both have kids, and I know summer's busy for them too. So,
so June and July and August?
I think August as well, because we are trying to go out of town for the month of August. And so that would give us
like a little more flexibility on scheduling and uploading stuff. So
yeah.
So I think that's the plan right now. Of course, it could change.
Right.
We'll see how it goes.
But yeah, we'll just do replays on the weeks we don't do new episodes. So, but we are going to do some new episodes, so we're not leaving you high and dry. But.
Yeah, there will be a new episode at least every other week, unless we just get so totally inspired and we just pick back back up. Or
I just miss coming on here and saying ridiculous things. So, but anyway, well, we should get to Holly's episode because, wow, I mean,
yes,
so good.
Yes, and let us know what you do, what you take away from it. We would love to hear how you're changing, because I think that everyone's going to pull a little something different.
Okay, all right.
So here's Holly. So today on the podcast, we're really excited to talk with Holly Darling. Hi, Holly. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks.
Oh, we're glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you.
So let me read your bio and then we'll jump into the questions. Holly has written 9 romance novels and has 23 years of sales and marketing experience, and has spent the last 11 years coaching entrepreneurs through the startup process and teaching authors to use email marketing to sell more books. Her passion is sequencing and segmentation to build a healthy, thriving list.
Oh, that's great. We all need to hear that. So tell us how you got started working with authors.
Sure. So I was an author myself before I started working exclusively with other authors, and found that in the author spaces I occupied, we all kind of bring a skill set to those conversations when we get together and talk about things. And my skill set was marketing, but more with a focus on emails, because I have always enjoyed writing emails, and I started working in the entertainment industry in the promotional departments back in the 90s when, email marketing wasn't really a thing, but emails were a thing, right? And so that's kind of where social media did not exist. And the only way you could kind of contact people was either to pick up the phone or call them or email them. And so I found that I really enjoyed it. And people would start to ask me a lot of questions, about it. And I enjoyed social media, but I found that I was focusing more of my efforts on building a list and how that worked. And so in my, in my day job at the time, I was, and I still do, I work as a consultant for the government, teaching startups and existing entrepreneurs how to grow their business, grow their digital revenue. And I found myself thinking of all the advice I gave to them was, if somebody consistently asks you for help in an area and you're trying to figure out a new way to monetize your business, why not pay attention to those common questions? And so I'm like, okay, like it's a case of, listening to your own advice. So I finally said, I'm going to do that too. Right. So that's kind of how it was born. I started just purely like on an hourly rate, helping people and writing their emails. But what I found was I'm a big fan of voice coming through in your brand in all angles. And even though, I can write an email, there are still small words and nuances that weren't coming through. And so what I found was it was a better fit for me to create a business that gave people the foundations and the basics and the strategies behind what to write, and also to help break down those barriers as to why they weren't doing it, as opposed to actually doing it for them. So that's where I'm at now.
Very good. Very good.
So like you taught them to fish, basically, by saying,
you taught them to fish.
And then you let them go do it, right?
Exactly.
Oh, that's great. Well, so is there anything that you wish authors knew about like email marketing, like how you're helping them? What do you wish they knew about you and what you do?
The biggest thing the first thing that I always start with is that like the resistance to it is always, nobody wants to hear what I have to say other than particularly I could tell them I have, a release coming or something on sale, but nobody wants to know anything else about me. So why would I focus on that? And my answer is always like, we are cool people. We write books, but I mean, I read emails from people who walk through the woods and find things, it's like, there's commonality there, and people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And how are they ever going to get to that point unless you're confident that people do want to know who you are and hear from you? And you don't necessarily have to give up everything that you have that you hold private. It can just be a sense of of building this community. And I often use, the example of, everybody has at least one person who lives in the celebrity or the famous space, whether you enjoy poetry, whether you enjoy film, whether you enjoy art, whatever it is, you have someone you admire and you enjoy. And you typically want to know more about them and what their creative process is, or how they get to there, what's the story behind what they're doing. So why isn't that you too?
Right. Very good. Very good. I love that. What do you see authors doing that they do because they think they have to, but they aren't producing results?
Twofold. I'll answer that like in the email space, and then I'll answer that in the general marketing space.
Great.
And why I always think, So in the general marketing space, if I had a dime for every time somebody said, I hate social media, it drives me crazy. And there's the odd outlier who's like, it's amazing. And there is that in every scenario. But for the most part, there are a lot of frustrations out there on the day-to-day kind of handling of how social media responds to what we need it to do. And I'm not saying don't be on social media, but I am saying that building businesses on land you don't own is always a recipe for a frustrating journey. And in email marketing, you own that space, you own the land, you make the rules. And social media, somebody else makes the rules, and you have to play by their rules. So be there, but don't be frustrated because the landowner is changing the rules on you all the time, because you don't have a contract with them. They make all the rules. And so exploring other options, or putting a heavier weight on email marketing and learning how to use it in a way that can actually, you can see direct results, and you can take that data and use it to grow your business is a smart strategy. And so then when it comes to email, when people are like, I'm using email, but I don't think it's working. My kind of first thoughts are often surrounding the deliverability issue, which is something that was a word that came up last year when Apple decided to create their privacy, Optin, where, the data is not always reliable. And so I'm like, you may not be doing your email wrong, this specific content and what it looks like, but what you need to do is educate yourself on the reasons why it may not be getting in front of as many readers as you want. And that's what deliverability is all about. And it feels like, ew, that feels awfully overwhelming and intense, but it really isn't. And so it's more about consistency, frequency, and the content. So what's inside of it. And with those three things, you can usually start to see some better data coming back to support your efforts in email.
Right. I will say that the privacy stuff has really affected some areas of my business. I don't notice it as much with my email, but I'm sure it does. I'm just not a real big data person. I've got that on my list of things to ask you. But it's been an issue over the past year, or not quite a year yet. But how can people, I mean, I guess you're going to tell us later how people can get around that or make that work for them as opposed to work against them.
Yeah, it felt like a big issue, and there definitely was some preparation for users of email marketing prior to the implementation in September of the data update. However, what studies are showing is that it still hasn't got a full opt-in. It really was more about us as users of the medium to shift the data that we care about, and change our expectations on open rates and baselines, right? And so all that really means is, yes, it's annoying, and yes, it's a shift in how we do business yet again. But it still hasn't shown that it has that huge of an impact on how readers get our emails and open them. And I would say your first kind of thing would be, and hopefully the service that you're using has this data, and most of them do, some of them don't, where you can go in and say, show me what email services my subscribers are using. And what you often find is that where you thought the majority of your readers are opening emails on an Apple device, a mobile device, they're actually using Gmail for the most part, as opposed to Apple's internal system. Now, we're not going to get too technical into it, but because there are some nuances there where if they're on an Apple device and reading Gmail, there are some skewed points. But for the most part, when I help clients, which I frequently, let's just kind of look at this first. And they're like, oh, okay, so I can kind of trust this open rate. I can't fully trust it, but I can know that it's giving me a fairly accurate, but what we're not doing is saying that open rate is a definite accurate assessment of what I'm doing. But now I can say, I do have a lot of Gmail users who are not using iOS to open these emails, which means that that data is coming back, and I am seeing kind of the what that's happening out there. So it was concerning, but now that we've kind of had some time to study it, there are some studies that if you ever want to see them, I have like links and stuff to I'm sure you probably don't, but they're out there, saying, okay, and the adoption of it by Apple users was not as fast as what they thought it would be.
Okay. Well, that's good news then.
Yeah.
Very good news. Yeah.
Well, we talked a little bit about things you see that people doing that maybe is not very effective. Do you have any, what are the most common mistakes that you see authors making with their email?
Sure. The biggest one, and my first question when there's two of them, but my biggest one, first question I'll always ask is, do you have a welcome sequence? And if the answer is no, which it more often than not is, surprising to me because that's like my favorite thing in the world. But it's like, let's start there. And it doesn't have to be this big, huge project. And we can talk a bit more about that. But my first question is always, do you welcome the reader in and orientate them to your brand as quickly as you can? Because if you're not, 5 other authors are doing it, in somebody's inbox next to you. And you just have seconds, to catch them. And when they first sign up for your list is when they're most interested in opening your email, reading your email, clicking through your email and seeing who you are. And it's even more important when authors are doing large building opportunities where they are one of multiple authors in an offer to join a list. And they may not have even had their content or their books have been read by some of these people. They're just like, if you're in an anthology or a builder or something like that, chances are good that what you've written in that space hasn't been downloaded and read by the person. So, but they are still interested in joining and finding out later. So you've got to kind of strike while the iron's hot.
Right.
And then the other common question I have for them, are you what's called authenticating your domain? And that one is much more overwhelming and complicated to people because it's like tech language, right? And I'm not in tech. I mean, I went to school for marketing, and music. Those are that's my college history. So math is bad, evil. But it's not simple, but it is outlined. There are each individual email service provider outlines the stages in their help files very well. So what it means is when you send an email, and this is back to that deliverability, there's code that's racing back and forth. And on the other end, let's say you're sending it to a subscriber who uses Gmail. Gmail, before it decides where it's going to put that email, checks that you're legit. So they're trying to sort out the spammers and the hackers and the clickbaiters from the stuff that their user actually wants to read. And the first thing they do is check the code string that attaches your email to your website. And then it's called it's click data. It's called, and so this authentication basically is just a couple steps that you make in the back end that says, oh, okay, yep, it's kind of like a passport. Oh yeah, these guys are legit. We've done our quick search. Let's at least send it to either the promotional tab or the inbox, and you kind of giving your best start without having to really do anything to make that happen. You do it once, and then you don't have to worry about it ever again.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So we want to get more into your area of specialty. And I will say that Holly sent us an email pitching this to us, and she could do a masterclass in pitches, because this was one of the best pitches we've got, because you showed us the value you could give our listeners. And that's so important to Sara and I. We don't just do this because we want to hear ourselves talk, though I do listen to myself talk. We want to give value to the people who listen to us. So let's talk about double opt-in as a part of your welcome sequence. Well, first of all, let's talk about what a welcome sequence is. Sure. Tell people what that is, and then we'll talk about double opt-in.
So a welcome sequence, also known as a nurture sequence, it has a few different names it goes by, is a series of emails that happens automatically when a subscriber joins your newsletter list. And a series of email can be anywhere from one email to as many as you want.
Okay, great. So how does double opt-in play a part in that?
So double opt-in is super controversial and depends on where you live. It can be a legal piece to to what you're doing. And so I live in Canada, and we do have something called the Canadian Anti-Spam legislation, which double opt-ins are not required, but they fulfill all of the needs of a legal subscription to a newsletter. So for me, it's just easier to employ them. However, what I feel about and the same with, the European Union's GDPR, which you may have heard of, so General Data Protection Regulations. So different countries in the global community have different rules about asking for people's data in order to send them marketing material.
Right.
So a double opt-in can fulfill the needs and requirements of that global community easily. So that's point one. But for me, what I think, all right, if I'm going to use it, how am I going to use it so that it actually sells books? Because people think, oh, double opt-ins annoy people. And they used to annoy me until I started to kind of think about the strategy behind them. And what people often don't know is that when they say, yes, I'd like to create a double opt-in, most email service providers just have a little button that you flip on or off. Right. And if you flip it on, it gives you one, but that you can customize it. So you can make it look and say whatever you want. And so mine is actually the beginning of my welcome sequence. If I just flip how I think about it, as opposed to an annoyance, I think I'm actually going to start to move them into my brand so that once they get to that first email in my welcome sequence, they're already well aware of who I am, what I'm going to offer, what my books are all about, and where to find me. So you take that double opt-in, and mine has, it has my logo in it. It has some fun Canadianisms, and it's not huge. It still fits like within, no need to scroll or anything like that, but they'll know I'm Canadian. They know I write contemporary romance. They know I have humor inside of my books. They know my brand color is blue, and they know my name, because often people are coming into your list from two different directions, warm and cold. So they're coming from back matter, which they don't need too much nurturing as far as who you are. But more and often than not, people are coming not knowing who the heck you are.
Right.
So I'm going to do that. And then so I just kind of say, here's what's going to happen. You're in the middle of my Canadian double opt-in, is what I call it. It's painful, but I promise you on the other side of it, there's a lot of maple syrup, Justin Bieber, and something else. I can't recall. I change it every once in a while with like trending Canadian topics. And all you got to do is click that button below, head to your inbox, click one more button, and I'm going to give you a free book for doing that. And I know not everybody can do the free book, but they can deliver. They're talking about their lead magnet inside of there. So what have they got that's interesting to give to people? And then the thank you has a picture of me. So now they're also like, this is me. So now we are, people trust people more often when they can look at their face and see their eyeballs. And so it's a picture of me, and I'm like, I'm on the edge of the cliffs of Moher. And I have the book that's free that I'm giving them is an Irish romance series. So it's like, here I am standing on the cliffs of Moher, hoping I don't fall in, and thanking you for, coming here. And now you get to read A Vow, which is my lead magnet, and just click that button. You're going to have to go back to your inbox one more time. And these are emails that are also sending signals to, like, they're real emails. They're not just like double opt-ins, are actual emails arriving in your inbox. So they're getting delivered to your inbox. You're clicking on them. Like, signals are happening to like, say Gmail, it's like, oh, wow, like here's some emails from a new person. Oh, they're clicking, they like this person. So double opt-ins can be actually really beneficial. And when you're done with them, if somebody's willing to kind of continue on with you, you've warmed them up through that whole system, and it helps reduce unsubscribes from that first email in your welcome sequence.
That's awesome. That's great. So, I love that. I love that so much. Yeah,
I do too. That's brilliant, because basically you've taken something that, like, all I did was like slide the little thing over and say yes.
But it's I really just made a note of customized double opt-in.
Yeah, because
and it's not a big email, so it doesn't take long to customize it.
Yeah, and you're taking something. To me, it's like you're almost using that as like your first email. Like, like next we were going to talk about what you do inside each email in your welcome sequence. But that's like you're taking that and using it already in your double opt-in. And if it intrigues people and it's a little different than what they normally see, normally it's just like click this box. So if it's a little bit different and you tell them a little about yourself, I think that's really smart, and it'll catch their attention. So
when they're in the double opt-in, it's called a non-subscribe. So somebody that goes in and never comes out the other end.
Right.
And those are the biggest complaints I get. People get stuck in there. I mean, out of thousands of double opt-ins I've sent, I think I've had maybe 20 to 21 non-subscribes. And that's, no, it doesn't happen as often as people think. If you're, and less so if you are leading them and setting their expectations, and making sure they know that this will be over, momentarily, and and here's where you need to go to find it, and people are used to it. They're getting more and more used to seeing them happen.
What I love about a welcome sequence is that it gives people time to get off the list. I've always said that if you're not working with me, you probably need to be on somebody else's list. I don't want you on my list if that's not where you want to be. And I think people a lot of times are like desperate to build that list, so they'll take almost anybody. And but then they're dead weight, and we don't want that. So that's what I love about my welcome sequence, because I really do give them a chance to be an what did you call it? Not an unsubscribe, a non-subscribe.
Non-subscribe, yeah.
Because I'll just say, if you're not an email person, follow me here and here. You'll get an email when I, from Amazon or Goodreads or whatever, when I have a release, or just get on. I think I have a list of just releases, I do. And so anyway, all that to say, I think that's awesome, because I don't want people on my list that don't want to be there.
Oh, yes. That's my mission. And man, that is the hardest thing to convince people.
I know.
No matter who I'm talking to, what industry I'm talking to, bigger feels better.
Yeah.
But it is not always.
It is not.
It's like that saying, like the riches are in the niches. So you want your list to be very niche specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
So take us through an email welcome sequence and what you recommend in each email.
Sure. My most, in the next common question is, how many emails should I have?
Right.
And my answer is, if you have none, one is perfect, but if you have one, let's start to expand to like potentially 3 or 4 is kind of a nice sweet spot to sit. But in the first email, it's the most critical. And it's the easiest one to kind of get delivered. It's the easiest one to kind of use a clear strategy with. More often than not, people are going to read the first email, and then what happens after that is determined by what is inside of the first email. So not to put so much pressure on email number 1, but it does have a lot of things it needs to do. It needs to orientate the person to start like right away, like, thanks for coming here. And then if you're coming from a book funnel promo, or after reading a book, or wherever, you need to connect those dots, right? Like, because often, like, say a book funnel promo you're in, and there are 75 authors in there, and you're like, who is this? And what you don't want is the wrong, again, you don't want the wrong person on your list. Right. And so making sure you take step 1, like, hey, you came here from here. My name is Holly, I'm going to give you a few emails. It's very text heavy. It's image light. It's just introducing yourself, making sure they know how they got there, so they're not mad. And the one thing we don't want is anyone marking you as spam, right? So you're like, you came here, and here's who I am. And then I usually set the stage for what's coming. So over the next 7 days, I have 3 more emails, coming that will introduce, for me, I take my best-selling books, and right now they're kind of all in one single series, so it's easier. And I use them as my theme right through the whole series. So you're going to meet the big Irish family, the Murphys. They're going to. My favorite is Brennan. That's he's coming at you in the next email. And I often will say, like, this is an enemies to lovers. I'm gathering data and setting tone and expectations for them. So always thinking, I want people that love maybe Irish romance in the contemporary space that skews a bit older. So my heroes and heroines are all in their mid to late 30s or mid to upper 40s, so in that range. I just try to give them in 1 or 2 sentences, which is hard, who I am and what I write about, and make sure that I'm right for them, right? And that they know that there'll be more emails coming in a fairly rapid fire situation. And that they can click a button to download the lead magnet, which is essential. And I have another picture of me, and that's it. So ultimately, it's orientating, setting expectations, and setting your brand kind of tone, and away you go. I like it to be mostly text, because big images sometimes are harder to deliver. Lots of images are harder to deliver. and they're still getting to know you. So I want it to be short and sweet. I don't want to overwhelm them with a lot to read. I don't put lead magnets in that first. So some people will do like a chapter preview or something like that, which I think are great, but I think those are great for qualified readers only, which means somebody who's asked for that inside of their email. If you have something that requires a lot of scrolling, they, without having connected to your brand, they'll just like, I'm not reading this.
Too much.
Too much, right? So make it short, sweet, and make it do its job. And then email number 2, which I usually do 2 days later. So try not to wait too long. Thinking about like, if I'm new to them, I want to keep appearing in their inbox fast and furious at the top of this sequence. And then I can start to stretch the emails out after email 2. So I don't want them to forget about me. They need, it's that marketing theory of they need, and I think the number goes up every year. It used to be like when I was in marketing in the 90s, it was 7 touch points and you're in, right? But now it's like, I think I've heard 21. It's like, oh, good Lord. So I'm going to go for the 7. So if I'm like, well, they see me somewhere, that's me. They go to welcome, Optin 1, Optin, thank you. Welcome sequence, I'm at 4. I'm like, okay, I should be able to get some books sold, and email number 2. And then I'm going to go in, but I'm only going to go in with one offer, and it's my best offer. I've got the most reviews for it. It's a great cover. It has the best response. It's my easiest sell. And it makes sense, though the kind of caveat is it makes sense with whatever I've lead magneted. That's not a real word. So it's like, it's a natural progression. It doesn't have to be in the same series, because I get that a lot. Like, well, if your lead magnet is enemies to lovers, and then they've opened book 2, so they've clicked, so you can assume they've at least maybe downloaded it. And you have another enemies to lovers in a different series that sells really well, match them up. It makes sense, right? You can assume they like that. And so in email 2, it does a lot. It's selling that book. And then I myself have a little survey in there asking them to kind of stay or go. And I'm not asking them to go, but in not so many words, that's kind of happening. And it's in a survey that's like, do you like to get newsletters? Do you want to know all the things? Because I like to talk, and I'm a single mom. I love romance. I'm trying to date, all these kinds of stories. I'm giving them some ideas about what to expect in my newsletters. Or if you just want to know the releases, I only release twice a year. So that doesn't happen very often, but I do have lots of promos. So I do releases and promos. So I give them a choice. Choose column A, which is everything, or column B, releases and promos only. And then I ask them a secondary question. What tropes do you like? Enemies to lovers, second chance. And I said, I dislike friends to lovers, so you'll never see one of those from me. But if you like it, you better click here, so different questions. And then I use all of that data later, which we won't get into, but just kind of making sure, again, that they are in the right spot and they know what they're going to get. And so that's email number 2. It's a quick survey. It's a sale. And then email number 3 sells the rest of the series that I've been kind of slowly building. And then if they've opened and clicked all of those, I start to sort at that point. And what sorting is, technically it's called conditioning, but I call it it's just sorting. People are here, or people are here. People over here that have opened and clicked everything, they get and one more email that says, introduces them to the next series. This is great for people that have backlists. I don't even have a huge backlist, right? But even if you have like 3 books, you could do what's on pre-order, what's in my brain, what's coming, anything to kind of keep them engaged, because that's your new hot, highly engaged group of people. And then over here are those that have done nothing. And so that's column B. So if they have not opened and clicked anything at this point, I'm going to give them one more email that is very non-salesy. It's just, for me, I have a book with a guy with a man bun that has this, people either hate him or love him. And it's not so much him, it's his man bun. And I'm like, do you like man buns? Yes or no? And that's all the emails. Like, and I'm just trying to get them to click. Do you think that's attractive? And then I switch it up sometimes with like, are you into alphas or betas or cinnamon rolls? That's it. Because I'm considering, and it's all for me as well. I'm considering a cinnamon roll hero, but I'm not sure I have enough interest in it.
Right.
But so I want to just kind of get that data. But it's usually polarizing opinions, and it's just a click. It's not even in a survey. Just click this or this.
Right.
And if they do nothing, then they leave my list, which is ruthless. But for me, that's a hard place to get to. You can either, you can, something called an action that says remove from list if they have not opened this, or you can put them in a group over here and then don't email them. I do not email those people because they are going to bring down your deliverability.
Right.
So that's my average welcome sequence. I really rushed through like 3 and 4, but I think the critical emails are 1 and 2.
Okay.
Well, that's good. So many questions.
Yeah.
So many follow-ups. You go first, Jami.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so listen to all this. I think I may need to redo my sequence.
Yeah.
Because like for somebody who has a bigger backlist, I was like, what I do is I say welcome, and then I kind of gave them an overview of everything. And I think listening to you, it might be smarter to go back and say, this is my main thing. This is what people like the best, and focus on that. And then later on, tell them about the other things later. Would you recommend
if you
that?
think about when you walk into like a department store and there are all these things to buy, and you're like, I'm only here for one thing, but you get distracted, and then they might buy the wrong thing, or they never get to that one thing you want. Or the grocery store is always my big thing. Like, I came here for milk and I left with everything.
After
or
spending
Target.
$200.
Yes.
Yeah. Target.
Yeah, exactly.
I go for a pencil sharpener and I leave with,
a couch,
$300, worth of patio furniture or something.
Yeah. And you didn't get the pencil sharpener.
No.
Right.
Right.
So that's my point, is that if you really want to get them hooked into into who you are, it's best to start with the thing you think is most attractive to them, right? And not give them all these other options. Okay. Otherwise, they'll typically choose the wrong one, or they get overwhelmed and choose nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thought, I was like, you were talking about tropes and being very specific on what you like and don't like, and using that as research, and then also to kind of get them to click. And so I write mystery, and I don't think mystery tropes are quite as well defined as like romance. So for me, I've done something where I said, do you like romance in your mysteries? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of like, do you have any suggestions for like maybe somebody who's in like sci-fi or fantasy? Like, what would be good questions for those genres? Or mystery. I would take suggestions.
Or urban fantasy.
Yeah. I've worked with a lot of authors in all different genres, and we've worked on, some different questions you can ask. And I think you can go, it depends on the route or the brand voice that you have. So if you're kind of cozy, so it's light and fun, it's like, would your familiar be a cat or a raven, and different things like that. But always thinking, how does this tie into a book I have that I can sell them? Or a series that I can sell them. In sci-fi, it could be like, do you believe, there is life out there? Do you believe in these things? Like questions that, are pretty common, but that sci-fi lovers have strong opinions on, and that I've also done some, like, if you were in the game of Clue, would you want to murder somebody with a candlestick or with, a knife, and they're just fun questions, but they really give you an, A, get people clicking, and B, if you can tie that into, my heroine loves Clue, and she chose the candlestick, and you can kind of, if you're collecting this data, and this is like 2.0, but you can go back and say, you have a book coming out where it's kind of, ripped off of, or not ripped off, but like you're
Inspired by.
the heroine, inspired by Clue. Sorry, that's bad, poor form. Clue, and she loves Clue, and she finds herself like solving mysteries suddenly, and it reminds her of that. You send like the pre-order to that group only, or ARC offers to that group only who have clicked that choice in your welcome sequence. The welcome sequence can do a ton of data gathering for you. And whether you like data or not, you just got to learn how to make it automatically happen. So you're not in there all the time doing anything. And those are learned skills that can be self-taught easily, like especially depending on what email service provider you're using makes it easier or not. But and then you can say, hey, I got a group of people that love the game Clue, and I've got a book inspired by that. I'm going to send it to them and offer them ARCs, exclusively, or something like that, and then they feel very like it's a customized
special
experience. Yeah. So
perfect. Yeah, thank you. That's terrific.
That is really great. And I mean, like, even for like thrillers or mystery, do you listen to true crime podcasts?
Yes.
Who are your favorites? That kind of thing. Because I do. And no wonder I don't write those. Yeah. So you talk about using your welcome sequence to create engagement. Is that one of the ways you do that? And can you tell us some other ways that you use it to create engagement?
Yeah, sure. So engagement in email terms is clicks. It used to be opens, but I kind of think, so my theory is if somebody's getting all your emails and opening them, but not clicking, they're not actually engaging with your content. To some extent, it's a reply. Those happen so infrequently that I think they're probably a strategy nobody really needs to focus on. But those are great. When we do something, send out an email and we get replies, it's a great way to kind of talk to people. So, and create that engagement. So when I say engagement, though, I mostly mean clicks, and those are the kind of interactions that you're having with each other. And so we've talked about the surveys, and we've talked about book offers. But some other ways would be, it's always a click, but it's a click to, like you mentioned podcasts. I do podcasts a lot, but I also do like, I love pop culture. So I'll do, the Met Gala was just on. And so I took some Met Gala information, and you could create a little landing page. And these again are strategies for people that I see email as a great driver to my business. And I'm going to do less social media and more work inside my email marketing. But once you create one kind of system, it's very duplicatable. So I say that ahead of creating a landing page, that I have a couple different landing pages. One is just thank you, and the other one is, meant for things like, here are my favorite outfits from the Met Gala. Here are my whatever. And it can either live in two places. Most email service providers have landing pages that are free. You just kind of build one, but they're less customizable than, say, your website. So typically I'd like to move people to my website, because then I've got the hope of like, hey, here's all the other things I've got going on, right? And so I'll build a little landing page that's, got information about that. I have another series called Holly versus the House. And so as a single person, I live here and everything's always breaking and I'm trying to fix it. And so inside my welcome sequence, when I'm asking them those questions about what they'd like to see in newsletters, I could add another question about, here's some series that I have. And then if they click like Holly versus the House, they can go read some old ones, in a blog format, that lives there. So that's an engagement. If you are a blogger, super great way to get people over to your website to read your blogs. Do you like to read blogs? Yes or no? And then what happens is, especially like, it's really cool if you use MailerLite, they have this thing called a rule inside of a group. And so does ConvertKit, where if they click that, I love to read blogs, it automatically shoots them into its own little like blog sequence, where it delivers them one every month or something like that. You got to set that up, but once you set it up, done. You can duplicate it as much as you want, do it over and over again. Maybe you set it every 30 days to send out your blog post. If you want to collect interesting data like birthdays, you could say like, my birthday is on November 27th. Click this button and tell me when your birthday is. I've got a present for you, and that button automatically, it's called a custom field, and it just saves a date, and then you have an automation that whenever this date triggers, send them a little birthday gift, and these are little ways to get
so awesome. Yeah.
Unique, interesting clicks happening, because they're like, and some people will say no, and that's fine. But I love getting birthday discounts and freebies and things like that into my inbox. And so maybe I will, but it's just thinking outside the box, but less so like looking at your inbox and other brands that you interact with and what kinds of stuff do they do with you. I'm not a big believer in offering discounts through that. I think first and series free and lead magnets are great strategies, but outside of that, I'm rarely saying, you can buy this book direct from me for a less expensive price. It's, do you like hardcovers? Great, click, and then it goes to your website, to your own page with signed hardcovers. Sorry, like specialty stuff that you might have in direct. But for those that are brand new and are like, I don't have anything to sell anybody, I don't have a backlist, I don't have much of anything, those little points of interest are the best ways to create engagement. And it's great for you to decide, that's great data to decide what could I write next that really interests people. Whether you have 10 people or 10,000 on there, you can get a clear view of who your readers are and what they like to see. You can talk. I have one client that I work with that has one book and she never wants to write another one ever again. But she is a Regents professor. So she tours and is an English teacher. And she wrote a book about an adventure she took with her best friend who passed away while they were on a mountain, right? So got lost. She was lost, and then they found her, passed away. And she talks about nature and emotion, and that's her kind of thing that she loves to talk about. She has thousands of people on her list, and in her welcome sequence, it only has one opportunity to buy this book. And all of the rest of it is just talking about things she loves because she knows they love it too, right? And it's clicking out to her blog. It's clicking out to adjunct interests that, kind of partner up with that on websites that she knows that she loves and are reputable. And it's just kind of finding the opportunity to connect without being able to speak to somebody, typically showing them the things that are important to you and your brand.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
That really is so good.
Advice and ideas. So what about if somebody doesn't engage? We talked about that a little bit, but do you have any tips or ideas around that? What's the best practices? My
best practice is don't waste your time trying to make them engage, but do set up a system that addresses that. So, I have a re-engagement sequence that has been the same since I started. It doesn't change too much. And its only interest is getting them to click something. You can assume that two things are happening if people are not engaging. So not opening, not clicking your emails. Either they're not seeing it, regardless of where it lands, or they're not interested. And so if they're not interested, I'm not interested in spending time trying to get to them, but I will test that theory. So every 6 months, I'll send out a re-engagement sequence, and it's set up to trigger on a date. So it goes off January 1 and July 1st. And it's just to all those people, I create what's called a segment, to all the people who have not opened and clicked an email since the last re-engagement sequence ran, send them this email. And it's a fluff piece again. So for me in the romance, it's like, if you had to choose, it's a visual. If you had to choose this hero or this hero, which one would it be? And they are both heroes that kind of appear in my books, so on the off chance somebody chooses one, then they can get shuttled into, then you're going to love this book. right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to sell something if they do click, but if they don't click, they are removed from the list. And I'm constantly removing, it's called list hygiene, because your emails are delivered based on an average data. And what that means is your average open rate, your average click rate, your average unsubscribe rate, your average spam rate, your average hard bounce, and your average soft bounce. So say Gmail looks at those averages. And if you have, say, 5,000 people on your list, so 50% of your list is not opening and not clicking, then your average is obviously, it's a math equation. It's lower than it could be. If you removed all those people, because in the last 3 to 6 months, they've done nothing. And then you're sending it only to people that have opened and clicked, your average is going to spike, right? And then Gmail's going to go, ooh, people like this person. And they make assumptions about everybody. So it's unfortunate, right? So if you're a Gmail user, they make assumptions based on all of the Gmail users on your list. So look at, and it can divide that up quite easily. Like, okay, so you have a list of 1,000 people, 500 are Gmail users. Out of those 500, 30% are opening. So that's fairly strong. We'll send it to a promo tab. If on those 500 people that are using Gmail, 18% are opening, everybody's going to spam. Doesn't matter if that person opens and closes, we're making assumptions on averages, right? Getting rid of the people that are doing nothing is imperative to the revenue that's attached to your list. Because you can assume, because we cannot always track, where people go after they click, which is the disadvantage authors are at often. But we can assume that, say, 10% of your list is going to buy something. So say you have 1,000 people, so 100 people are going to buy. You want that to have the best chance, right? So if they're not going to deliver it right in an inbox in front of people, then you might only see 3 or 4 people buy because they haven't seen it.
Right.
So what would you say to the argument that some people say they never delete anyone from their list because maybe they're reading it, and then they open a new tab in their phone or computer and go to the website and buy the book, but they never click through. So so some people say they don't delete anyone ever because they don't want to lose that. So what would you say to that?
Well, I would say that it can't be happening often enough. It's all usually back up. If somebody's opening and then moving that email into a tab, and then not clicking and then doing a search, say on Amazon, for that author, which I assume is what the scenario that you're describing. Yeah. Are there enough people on your list that's happening? I've never done that, right? It's all about easy. I don't think there's enough people on anybody's list where that makes sense to me to ignore all of the data that says, what if you sent an email and 75% of the people clicked on something because 75% of the people got that in an inbox. The subject line was cool. They opened it. They loved you. It was easy and it was done. So are you going to jeopardize that for that? I'm not. And I'm not going to convince everybody that this is the way to do it. But I know I remember meeting you guys. You guys had Stephanie London on your
yes, we did.
Yeah. Stephanie is a friend of mine, and when we worked together a while ago, and she's like, I don't know what you're going to think of my welcome sequence, but I want you to look at it. And she removed people after every single email, and I'm like, you are ruthless. And I'm like, she's like, I don't want people on my list. I don't want to be here, and I'm like, okay, I at least give them 3 emails before I'm like, you're gone. But I think that people that are not doing what you need them to do with your email, there could inherently be something wrong with the way you're structuring your email, right? Because it needs to be easy. And I need to also have my day be easier, right? So I want to make sure that I'm doing the least amount of work for the most amount of impact. And that my readers are opening an email and seeing exactly what they need to do and knowing that it's easy for them to do it that way. So I'll end with 1 click is probably better than 10 clicks of offers, the same kind of theory. So if you're giving them, if it's too far down to find the buy, you don't want them to have to scroll all the way down to find that. You don't want them to have 10 different Amazon countries to try to figure out which one is theirs. You don't want them to, I don't know. It just, for me, it's all about ease. And I'm not going to worry too much about the people that don't fit within that framework I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
And then one other quick question on deleting people, since we have you here. So we have the ability to delete in my what I use ConvertKit, and you have the ability to like delete forever where they can't resubscribe, or just, I forget what the other one's called. It's just like delete, but they can subscribe again if they want to. Which one of those do you recommend?
I don't delete them forever so they can't resubscribe unless there is a problem. And I mean, I think in the last, I think in the last 11 years, I've encountered that once. And typically your email service provider can catch that before it comes to that point. And by that, I mean, like a lot of readers, like everybody's email has a trail. And email service providers are very interested in knowing what that trail is, right? Because they don't want people on your list who are doing nothing either. It hurts their deliverability. So they'll sometimes suppress people. And I get that occasionally where like, I've been sending this email to this one person who says she never gets it. And I'm like, ask your email service provider why. And they come back, they're like, she was blacklisted because her email was associated with spam. And it's easy to re-engage that and that be by no fault of her own. Like it could have been something happening on the back end, or her email was hacked at one point or what have you, but they have the power to figure out what's happening with that email. So I usually let them decide who can never come back. And I'll just let people come back if they want and then test them again. And I mean, and that's fine. If you have it in a sequence, so that means it happens automatically. It's not really taking any time off your table to do it.
Right.
Okay. Awesome.
Very good.
Great.
So how do you create a custom experience for your readers inside the welcome sequence?
The custom experience is that survey where I say, like, do you want all the things or do you want just, promos or what have you? And then what you set up from there can deliver a custom experience. So this is kind of overwhelming next level, but it because it's like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do that. But depending on the service provider you use, it's easy or a little more complicated. And the custom experience is really about that, or it can be what tropes or themes or things they like. And then, like I said, go back when you can either do it inside your welcome sequence, which is what I do. I have 30 days later, send them this book, right? That's an enemies to lovers. I'm going to give them some time to read whatever I've given them. And so that's a customized experience that I know they've clicked a button. I love enemies to lovers. I'm going to give them this. If the customized experience could be, I don't want to hear about your life. I only want to know about your books. Fine. I'm happy to just sell things to you. That works well for me. But so I'm excluding them from lifestyle emails and including them from there. But you can do that inside of a welcome sequence too. Like if you know your next email, for me, email 3 is not about my life. It's about selling books. And if you know that, you can set a condition. Don't send it to the group. The people that joined that group one email ahead. There are so many things you can do inside of not the sequence that you can't do inside of an email, something called conditions. So if they've been here before, do not give them this sequence. So like if you have multiple points of entry and they funnel to the same sequence, you can set a condition saying, if they've been here before, give them this email instead. Like, hey, welcome back. It's just one little change in a word, but that feels very, they knew I've been here before. Right? It feels special. Or it's just welcome on this side of people, that have not been here before. That's one that I would recommend doing all the time. If someone's been here before, do not give them this whole sequence again. Never, ever let that button be checked. But there's also kind of some technical ways to kind of, I put everybody into a group at the end of sequences. So based on, I have a couple sequences. I have a welcome and I have a back matter. So been here before, not been here before, or coming from a book and not coming from a book.
Right.
But I tag them all as mine is so simple. It's like been here before, and so then at the top of every sequence, where like book funnel is a very common one. So if you're doing multiple book funnel promos and they're always coming in the same sequence, you don't want those people to keep getting those 4 emails again over and over again.
Correct.
So it's like if they're in the group, been here before, they go over here.
Yeah.
If they're not, so that's a customized way to kind of make sure that people aren't overloaded with emails from you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, I haven't really thought about that. I'm going to make myself a note on that one right now. So before we get to the last question, I did want to ask you, do you have any suggestions for people you kind of touched on this earlier, but people building a list when they're new, they don't have a book to give away. They don't have this or that, what are some good suggestions for people to start doing and ways for people to start doing that?
Yeah. My first thing is always to kind of, so like when I was new and I didn't have anything else, but I wrote a lot of my books as I was working and traveling in Ireland. And I created this my 5 favorite romantic stops in Ireland. And it was a downloadable. And that was my lead magnet. And people are like, well, people only want books. I'm like, that's not true. People are often, more often than not interested in reading your lead magnet, if it doesn't relate to the series, so if it's just out there on its own, they might download it, but they might never read it. Right. Mm-hmm. So if I make some sort of fun downloadable that is very brand specific, they might read it. Like I said, my client who has the one book, she has her favorite hiking, a map with the favorite flowers she's found in it. People love it, right? Like, I love these flowers too. Where can you find them, kind of thing. You can do chapter previews, as a lead magnet. Mm-hmm. So if you are working on something, either edited or unedited, but you clearly are going to make sure that they understand, what that, what that is, what the limitations are there. You can do, I've had some people do coloring pages. They've done, like my favorite books, my top 10 books of all time. Here, a reading checklist. They've just created one in Canva, and it's digitized, and people can write it in, and they fill in their favorites at the top, and then you fill in yours. It's just something to connect you with somebody else, but really, it can be almost anything. It doesn't have to be a book, but those are kind of the common ones that are out there. I have one client who does cozy mysteries, and her heroine crochets, and so she created this crochet pattern, and that's her lead magnet.
Recipes are huge too.
Recipes,
cozies,
Yep.
I did the 3-chapter preview. 3 chapters, and
it's easy.
Built a 1,200 person email list of 12 chapters. So, 3 chapters. So, it can work. I think people say it doesn't work as well now, but I kind of feel like it's worth trying.
I think what, one of the bigger dangers that everybody gets into is listening to what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the other. I think it's all about how you strategize and implement it. It can work really well for you. Like, there are lots of people that have Facebook pages that, work really, really well, but I'm like, I hate Facebook pages. They're evil, but I'm doing just fine, so it's in marketing, it's all about testing and analyzing the data. They're like, one of my favorite, business owners is Michelle Romanov, and hers is always like, let the data decide, not what somebody's telling you. Get your advice and listen, but then let the data tell you the story.
And if it doesn't, if you try it and it doesn't work, you can always change it. So
try something else.
I'm right there with you on Facebook pages. I'm not a fan. So what trends do you see on the horizon, like for email and welcome sequences, things like that? Anything we should be looking out for?
Yeah, what I'm seeing more just in the general email space are people are really kind of have spent the year figuring out that deliverability is getting harder and harder, and so they're more interested in the in trying those text heavy emails, and by that I mean like their storytelling. Like we're by our nature great storytellers,
Right.
but we're shying away from telling our story inside of emails. And it's not necessarily our personal private story. Like I do character stories, and then you could turn those into lead magnets, right?
Mhm.
Or like bonus scenes. And so I do like, what's Brendan Murphy up to at Christmas? Well, he hates Christmas. He's hiding, and then you tell a little story from his perspective, and it's 2 paragraphs long, but it's a really fun little way to engage and keep that story alive, save it for future use, and get more deliverables. So there are more people interested in experimenting with that other than slapping a cover up and some links and a blurb and away we go. That's just not working as well as it used to as inboxes become more and more sophisticated. I see video being used in email more, people being interested in testing and creating those customized experiences. But certainly it's on a shift to thinking about the click as opposed to the open rate, has really happened since open rates have become an unreliable metric. A lot more people are like, well, how can I get this email not just open, but clicked on? And what does that look like for me? Email service providers are offering more and more sophisticated ways of managing your list, and it's taking advantage of what service provider you're using and what can they offer you. And if you're feeling frustrated with them week over week over week, it's exploring new options. Don't be afraid to do that. Not all the time, but at least make sure that that's kind of coming to the table. And there have been some major shifts in what email service providers are offering based on the needs, so SMS marketing, e-commerce, building your own little store and how to manage that through lists, paid newsletters. So I don't mean paid newsletter builders, but for you, like I have a tip jar. ConvertKit has some cool programs where you can be like, you don't want to buy anything this week, but you could tip me, it's $5, $1, whatever. Like the Substack kind of culture where the newsletters are paid, where they get maybe a cereal delivered there. That's an interesting trend that is growing outside of, say, the Gen Z market, where more and more millennials are interested in paying for customized experiences, and they won't mind paying $5 a month to get something, where newsletters have a conversion rate that, is mind blowing compared to social media. And even though it's not viral by any means, or you're not going to go viral and become instantly a #1 bestseller, but you can substantially elevate your revenue by an ask, and not to assume that people are not interested in different forms of receiving different types of written work through that newsletter, is doing yourself a disservice.
Very good. I love that. This has been so great. I mean, I have 2 pages worth of notes. So, and I don't take notes very often. So it's really great.
Awesome.
Where can people find out more about you and your services? And you have a course, is that correct?
Yeah, sure. I'm at hollydarlinghq.com. And there are a bunch of free courses in there, little starter kit kind of things, some blog posts, and then there's some paid content in there. I have specialty courses on MailerLite, Flowdesk, and ConvertKit is releasing in June. And then some general email marketing courses. I do have a Facebook page. If you just search the same thing, Holly Darling HQ, you'll find me there. Or you can just join my newsletter, and I send newsletters typically once a week, and then occasionally twice when I have something super exciting to talk about. But that's where you can find me.
All right. Very good. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I've admired you guys for a while, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to see if we can chat and see.
Well, it was awesome, and your pitch was great. So
thanks. Yeah, that's a thing too. I talk about a lot, not so much newsletter, but in that exploring new opportunities for marketing, making it easy for the person you're asking is critical. So if you want to be on a podcast as an author, because there's lots of podcasts out there talking about books and inviting authors, you tell them exactly who you are and what you talk about and what you can bring, and make sure you've listened to their podcast so you know that you're a fit, and but you could pitch like a local newspaper. Like there's lots of, you have a little pitch. I have a pitch deck that, I can just duplicate it, do the research, fill in the customized pieces. But you can get that kind of information from data gathering. That's one thing I love about newsletters is data gathering from what are people doing? I get a lot of responses when, what podcasts are you listening to? What do you, and like, okay, well, how could I be there? How could I be that person? And then creating, something more than just, hey, can I be on your podcast?
Yes. Right. So important.
Yeah. In pitching for podcasts, WWHD, what would Holly do?
Yes, this has been great. So thank you for all the good information. And we'll have all the links and everything at wishidknowthenpodcast.com. And thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast, and to Adriel Wiggins for doing the admin. And we'll see everybody next week. Bye.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.